What's going on, Bucs fans? Back here, the Pirate Parlay podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm your host, JC, and it's a Victory Wednesday. Kind of, sort of, a little bit. Liam Coen's back in town, spurning the Jacksonville Jaguars for their head coaching job, which sounded like they were getting ready to offer him to come back as a Bucs OC. But it's not a full happy day because the Bucs also lost somebody as well. We'll touch on that and more after we come back from the break, so stick around.
Turn up your volume, because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome back to the other side here again on the Pirate Parlay podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm your host, JCM. Before we get into it, do me a favor, guys, like that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. That way, anytime we go live, it will share it. I always want to give a big thank you to my people who listen to this in podcast format as well. Appreciate you guys. Come on over to the live one time. But big news in Tampa Bay as Liam Coen is coming back as a Bucs offensive coordinator. He was set to interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars today for the second time, this time an in-person interview after meeting with them virtually. It was set to happen today, this afternoon. Word got out that afternoon appointment interview will not be happening as he is returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as their offensive coordinator with a hefty pay raise, according to Rick Stroud at Tampa Bay Times. It's in the neighborhood of what Vic Fangio is getting, a defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, around $4.5 million to return. So not a bad little chunk of change to return. That's about half, depending on the demand, half, what a first-time head coach would make, around $9 million. So cut it in half, come back. No succession plan in place, according to Stroud. It just, what I've been saying the last episode we were here and what I've been saying throughout the season, I just don't get the feeling that he wanted to leave. He's really happy here. He loves Tampa Bay. He loves the culture, the organization, the players that he coaches. It's a place where you come and you really don't want to leave. Heck, Brady retired and unretired because he wasn't ready to leave yet. So, all those things factored in. Obviously, the Bucs investing in him financially as well as just, as a person and everything like that. That played a big part of it as well. And, the recruitment, according to Peter Schrager from NFL Network, was the Glazers, Jason Light, Todd Bowles, Mike Greenberg, and Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield throwing that out there. Of course, we don't know if he won the one-on-one at Sawgrass or not. That was the stipulation on that first interview. Maybe he lost but won the second one closer to here. So who knows what happened there, but Baker definitely a part of keeping him here in Tampa Bay. It's a big news for the organization, big news for the fan base. As you could tell, it was pretty much divided, either do whatever it takes to keep Liam Coen or fire Bowles and make Liam Coen the head coach. So you could see the results instantaneously. The way that he gave Baker Mayfield and what he means to Baker Mayfield in this offense, he put so much more on Baker Mayfield's shoulders and say, hey, you want to be the guy, be the guy. Gave him all these different responsibilities at the line, cans and calls and switches and things to, put them in the best position to succeed. Liam did that as much as he could as an offensive coordinator, and the results weren't always pretty, but a lot of the time they were very pretty. And he put that trust into Baker and fostered that confidence into Baker. Like, hey, if I call something, you see something, you make that call. And it paid off a lot. And when it didn't pay off, Baker either used his legs to get out of the thing, the trouble that he's in, or sometimes, got himself into more trouble. But, I think what Liam means to Baker is exponential to the fact that he can continue with something that he started with Baker Mayfield, something that Baker hasn't had, and he can continue to elevate him to a higher level. Remember, too, what Baker did, 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns, third in the league in passing yards, tied for second in touchdowns, top 10 in passer rating, top 5 in completion percentage. He did that half a season without Chris Godwin and missed 3 games without Mike Evans. And then towards the end, he missed 2 to 3 games without Cade Otton. Bucky Irving will be coming into his second year, another year of growth for Cody Mauch, who, by the way, finished as the fourth best pass block efficiency in the NFL at guard, fourth best, first in the NFC. So the arrow trends up with him. Again, arrow trending up with Gedeke. Barton will be even better. Trishan Wirfs is an all-pro on both sides of the line. That's crazy to say because no one's ever said it before. He did it. And then, who they plug in at left guard. If it's Bredesen, I think they'll be fine with that. If it's not Bredesen, maybe through the draft, they can get some good guys. Third round, maybe a Tate Rutledge or an Austin Booker in the second round. There's some really quality guys that you can draft and develop in this. And Elijah Klein, too, developed really nicely behind the scenes. And the Bucs are pleasantly surprised with his development, too. So we'll see how that shakes out. But if Godwin comes back, which I think he will, and we'll get into scenarios on what could happen now that there's another domino that fell today. If Godwin is back, which I'm fairly certain he will be, I think the sky's the limit for this offense. And for Baker Mayfield, I think we could be talking about if he had Godwin for even half the rest of the season that he missed, Baker might be leading the league in passing yards and touchdowns and all this. And the Bucs might have won that game that went into overtime against the Chiefs. Maybe won that game they probably should have against the 49ers. So it's one of those things where I think the Bucs are in great shape with the continuity they're having, something they haven't had in the last 3 years. I think Baker's in great shape because I think what Dave started, I think Coen finished, and I don't even think we've seen the finished product yet. As Michael Pless says, Bucs will have a top 3 offense in the league for 2025 if healthy. I can't agree more. I can't agree more that I think they're going to be fine as far as where they pick up where they left off. And I think it's going to be build a lot of excitement because you don't need much on that offensive side of the ball. Again, you might need a new swing tackle if Justin School gets an opportunity, backup center if Hainsey gets an opportunity. And we'll see what they do at left guard. But I think, those are minimal positions you're looking for. Maybe you upgrade wide receiver 4 from Trey Palmer and Raheem Jarrett, Sterling Shepard types. But I think the offense, you're set. You're set. What's going on, everybody in the chat? We got a couple people in here. So Michael Pless says Bucs are probably still playing if Godwin was healthy. I want to say what's up there, people in the chat. Andre says, with Jack's firing the GM, any chance they'll hit up Coen again? Kieran Butt says the same thing. One Rick Stroud tweet has suddenly made Jags fans think they still have a chance with Coen. Yeah, the news around that is Coen has still not signed his contract yet. Of course, as Coen turned down and spurned the Jacksonville Jaguars for their head coaching position, almost an hour to a couple hours after that, he broke their franchise and they fired Trent Baalke. This is after multiple coaches have spurned the Jaguars in their last 2 cycles because they did not want to work for Trent Baalke or with Trent Baalke. The last person to do it was offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich, who said, no, thanks, I don't want to go there. And now another Bucs offensive coordinator says, no, thanks, we're not going to go there. Ben Johnson was a name who was considering possibly if he could bring his own GM in or have paired with his own GM instead of having Trent Baalke there. So they screwed the pooch. And now, they're having to scramble. Maybe they wait for Joe Brady, but does Joe Brady have interest in the job? Maybe they wait for Robert Saleh, who will be interviewing this week, Friday, I believe, and Patrick Graham tomorrow. The odds came out yesterday that Patrick Graham had the same odds as Liam Coen, so maybe that's the direction they head in. We'll see. But they fired Baalke, and now some fans are worried because Coen has not signed his contract yet that he could jump ship, that they could up their offer. Up their ante. Some fans I've seen are worried that he'll take Greenberg with him, who hasn't even interviewed. Be like, yeah, take me, but I'm taking Greenberg with him. I don't think so. There's been a commitment already in place. There was a report out there that Coen and his camp had reservations about Baalke, which may or may not be true. I won't get into that, but that there was a demand that Spytek be the GM and he comes over as a coach or he's not doing it. That is absolutely false. That no demands were ever made. it comes down to, again, Liam Coen choosing the Buccaneers, as so many people have recently since Tom came here. There's a reason that people want to come to the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers now too. They got some consistency, continuity in place on this offensive side of the ball. The defense needs work, but you see they've got consistency too. 5 straight years in the playoffs, 4 straight NFC South titles. That looks attractive to some veterans. No sales tax in Florida, only half the season you're paying. Those things look attractive to free agents, and it looked attractive to Liam Coen, which is why he stuck around. Because this offense, does have a chance to be top 5 again, top 3. This defense, if reinforced, and again, they tried to reinforce it last year. Just Bryce Hall went down and Whitehead wasn't as good. And, could they have done more at safety? Yeah, but they felt like they had some guys there who could step in and play. Could they have done more at cornerback where Bryce Hall went down in week 1? Linebacker probably should have been addressed. But if recency bias had a lot of fans, including me, thinking that KJ Britt would be adequate, maybe it's just because Devin White was so bad that KJ Britt's play in the playoffs against the Lions and down the stretch looked really good. You're like, all right, you'll be fine. You got Levante, he's another older, slower, but you'll be fine. I don't know. But, now they can really go out. They'll have some money once they move some things around, and they can sign some better veteran depth. Veteran depth want to come here and not break the bank, kind of like the Pats did for so long. The Pats never heard the Pats go out and sign a big-name free agent. What they would do is they would spend, okay, we're going to spend $8 million on this guy. Let's spend $4 million and $4 million on these guys, 2 guys. Now we have depth. We have guys that can maybe do different things. And we can deploy them in different ways and, find ways to make, so it's kind of, I think that's what the Bucs are going to try to do is go towards depth this season, but there will be an attractive spot too for some of those free agents. So whether some of those guys you remember, right? The guys you remember being bosses and still have some juice left. And, now they're playing on vet minimum deals and stuff like that. Maybe they get a couple of those guys, not saying like the Brady years, but guys who can still play, and that, will want to come here. So, and I think that, again, that makes this destination an attractive destination, and one why Liam Coen and his family want to stay. He's married with 2 kids. It wasn't just his decision. But they really love it here. And players love it here. And you can get that feel and that sense in the locker room, talking to these guys. And that's radiated throughout the league, and culture. The culture that the Bucs have is a big thing that's going to draw free agents here. One thing that could draw Bucs free agents from here, upcoming Buccaneers free agents, is some rather disappointing but also happy news as well. You feel great for it, but the Bucs lost their assistant GM John Spytek to the Raiders. He becomes their full-time GM. He's got a big task ahead of him, real big task. You're asking him to replace a quarterback, a running back. That offensive line needs help. Their wide receiver 1 right now is penciled in as Jacoby Myers. Their defense needs help outside of a few players. They've got a bunch of free agents. But Spytek has taken the job, and Brady's there, and I'm sure undoubtedly knows that this is going to be a slow burn. Spytek is incredible. It's a big loss. I know some people think, you hear about Greeny, and what Greeny. Everybody knows what Greeny does, right? What does Greeny do? Someone drop it in the comments. What does Greeny do for the Bucs? I bet you everybody and their mother kind of who pays attention knows what Greeny does. He's a contract guy, right? He's the salary cap guy. He makes these numbers work so the Bucs can bring back everybody last year, so they can bring Brady and everybody back there in the Super Bowl years. He's the one that makes all the numbers work, him and Jackie Davidson. But a lot of people don't really understand what John Spytek's role really was with the team. He did everything, pretty much. He did everything. He was player personnel. Amazing eye for guys, not only in the draft, but also in free agency, those low-cost signs, those Ben Bredesons, those low-cost Tavier Thomas, who was a beast on special teams. Not just this season, but other finds as well. Greg Gaines, That's him. On top of that, he also is huge in the draft. He plays a big presence in the scouting prospects as well. Every third day of the draft, he comes down to address us in the media. Kind of some practice, but also to kind of just tell us his thoughts on the players they selected and overall the draft as a whole. Always gives a long shout out to everybody involved, name by name. He's a great guy. And he's also part of the game plan as well, putting the game plan together. When Brady was here, and I'm sure now that as well, kind of advanced scouting, not so much the game plan, but the scouting department, advanced scouting department, and cutting up the film and watching these guys and presenting them to Baker and Liam, and he does so much, and it's going to be a big loss. We'll see if he tries to poach anybody with him. It seems like Mike Greenberg is going to stick on. Him and Jackie Davidson will stick around as Bulls assistant GM. Wouldn't be surprised to see Jackie elevated to assistant GM as well. But they're going to, Greenberg had an interview, 2 interviews rather with, or just 1 interview with the Jets. And, obviously didn't get it. That just went to, actually it's still open, but doesn't seem like that's going to be the way they go. They could, which would be disappointing, but he hasn't been on the names of lists for second interviews yet. So, there are other options to replace Spytek. You look at Rob McCartney and Mike Beal, director of player personnel, director of scouting. They could go outside the organization, bring John Robinson back, who was here for a while as a Bucs assistant before he took the Titans job. He's been out of football since they let him go a couple years ago. Jackie Davidson again is another name, so they can promote from within, or bring someone with some familiarity. But it's a big loss. It's definitely a big loss for the team, just because he's so adept at finding players that can help this team, and he knows what it's looking for. And you look at the Bucs free agents this year. No one really jumps out, but there are some guys. Could he go after Chris Godwin? Is that a possibility? They've got $106 million. I don't know. Potentially. I don't think so. I think Godwin comes back, but he could throw some money at a guy like Anthony Nelson, who's that ultimate team guy, right? Maybe they want Joe Tryon-Shoyinka over there and can get him on a cheaper deal. Maybe Kyle Trask is a guy that they bring in if he likes it. I don't know what his thoughts are on these individual players, but it's just kind of Robert Hainsey. Could they bring him over? He's played guard or center over there I know they just drafted Jackson Powers Johnson, but could they use him at guard? Could they, he played tackle. It was a little bit small, but we saw Luke Gedeke, he's a little bit undersized for what a tackle usually is, and he's a top 5 tackle in the league, KJ Britt, not JJ Russell because he's exclusive, but so again, not crazy guys. Greg Gaines, Ben Bredesen, but could he poach a guy like Anthony Nelson? The thing is, the biggest thing for Spytek is, can he build a locker room culture? Can he nail the head coach hire, right? To help build that locker room culture, build that team culture, to get back to just win, baby, right? Because the Raiders haven't been there in a long time. So it's a big loss. Definitely happy for him. He still deserves he so deserves it. Deserves it the last couple of years now. Obviously connection with Brady there. They were teammates at Michigan. Didn't know each other. Brady was a starter and he was a scout team, but obviously got to know each other the 3 years here. And I think it's a great hire. He should have been hired a long time ago. But it's certainly a loss for the Bucs. Let's get back to these comments. Michael Pless says, can focus majorly on defense and depth overall. I talked about building that depth, and defense is going to be a big part of that. Again, maybe you have to replace a left guard, a swing tackle, and, a backup quarterback, obviously, and maybe a fourth wide receiver, Maybe that's what you're looking at. And you could probably use one of those picks in the draft for a wide receiver or a developmental swing tackle, center, or something like that. But yeah, defense should be the key. Inside linebacker, with or without Levante coming back, but certainly with Levante coming back. Without Levante coming back, cornerback depth, or potentially a starter, or potentially, that guy waiting in the wings. Jamel Dean hasn't been a figure of health, and he doesn't make plays on the ball. He's due $15 million. Do you think that $15 million is worth it? Do you think you can trade him? I don't think they'll fetch what they got for Carlton Davis. Although maybe in a different system, different scheme, maybe he plays a little bit better. Press man coverage, where he can run a lot of that, in a scheme where he can run a lot of that, I think he'd be really successful. But do you move off him? Can you trade him? What would you get? A 4th round pick, maybe? Is that worth it? Maybe a 4th and a 6th. Recoup that 6, get some extra capital to move around the board, or select another player. Like, what does that look like for you as far as the return on Jamel Dean heading into a contract here? You got a 3rd from Carlton. I don't think you get that, but what does that return look like for you? And does that become an issue where you need just more than depth? Now you need a starter there outside of Zion, and of course edge rusher. Like, they need a speed rusher, even just a situational pass rusher that can just go and get there multiple times a year. I'm talking 10, 12, 14 sacks. They need that. And is that guy in the draft? I don't know if it's at 19. I think there's guys who could become that. Mike Green, who I know Plus is a big fan of, or James Pierce Jr., which I'm a big fan of. Those 2 guys are guys, Kyle Kennard is another one that went with some speed, can get around the edge, and you've got the guys who can run through people, and Diaby and Braswell. I think Nelson will be back, unless Spy just throws the bag at him to be one of his culture starters there, which I think he'd be a great guy to have in that locker room. Him across from Crosby, and any other moves they make, I think it'd be good. But I'm getting off the trails here. That's the thing. So when you look at this team and the way it's made up, like, those are the pieces that you need. That's where you've been hurt the most. Maybe backup safety too, cornerback, injuries to cornerback depth. You're having Josh Hayes and Tyreek Funderburk out there. Tyreek is raw. He's not ready. Josh Hayes is, barely a special teamer at this point. Now you're down to Ryan Neal coming off the street to potentially start a game. So those are the positions that you need to emphasize on defense, with Plus and can focus majority on defense. Bucs fan says, now that we just need to get Jason to knock this free agency out of the park, snag us a baller, game-wrecking edge and a cornerback, get us a coverage linebacker. Again, those are the 3 pieces they need. And if they get those 3 pieces, no matter if it's through the draft or through free agency, a combination of, that's what they need. I think, you're spending probably at least 2 of your top 3 picks on defense. That's if you want to try to replace a guard or something like that on offense. Maybe you're taking someone there, but I think that's what you're doing. If not, all 3 first picks and free agency's got to be geared towards there. Kieran says, I'm happy most for Baker. He finally has some stability when it comes to his play calling. 2 years, that's it. This is the 2nd time he's had a coordinator for 2 years. He's had 7 offensive coordinators before Liam Coen, 8 head coaches before Todd Bowles. He's not had a fair shake. And I preached that when he first came here, and I preached that last year. Like once it clicks for him and he's got some continuity, like, I think Baker can have an even better year. 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns. I'm not saying by much. He's not going to throw like 5,050 touchdowns. But, I mean, everyone's healthy and the offense continues to click. Like, I don't see a reason. It's not like by the time the Bucs are playing other teams, especially late in the second half of the season, it's not like teams didn't know what the Bucs are going to do. They're going to throw some new wrinkles, but it's not like teams don't know what the Bucs are going to do coming in next year. So they got 5 more games of tape on them from 2024. Now they know how to stop them and slow them down. I don't think so. The only team that slowed the Bucs down themselves really this year, outside of the Broncos, which just came out and the Ravens for the first 3 quarters. The only team that really slowed the Bucs down besides those 2 teams were the Bucs. Penalties and slow starts and drop passes, and that was the crap that stopped the Bucs this year from having a better season. So another year where now you're not thinking, the offense, you're moving, you're grooving, the run game is going to click, the passing game's clicking. Baker can take that step forward. It's going to be, I think, a much better much better year for Baker Mayfield, much better year for this Bucs offense, if not similar to last year. I know some people are saying, oh, there's a regression, a step back. People are going to figure out Liam Coen. I don't think you figure out Liam Coen. I don't think he's one of those coaches. I think, as you've seen with Sean McVay, he'll adapt to his personnel, adapt to what he's doing, adapt to the team that he's playing, and he'll find a way to make the adjustments in game, at halftime, late in game to get plays, get things moving. And he's not a guy who's stubborn in his ways where this is going to work no matter what, and we're going to stick with it until it does work. That's not him. That's not his MO. And I think, it would be much better. Bucs fan says the Bucs are close. A few better players and better defensive coaches. They're on their way. Well, they might be losing one coach. That's something else that I wanted to touch, and that's a perfect segue, Bucs fan, because Casey Rogers is interviewing with the Packers for their defensive line position. Casey Rogers, defensive line coach, but also co-defensive coordinator for the Bucs. So demotion, I don't know, kind of. His contract was up. We don't have really any reports of anyone else's contracts up, whether that's Kevin Ross in the secondary with Nick Rapone as well, the safeties coach, corners and safeties coach, Jordan Edwards as well, and Larry Foote. Not sure if any of those coaches' contracts are up, but I agree. I think there should be some coaches. I think you can, Rapone's done a great job for this Bucs team and getting Antoine Winfield and getting some of these guys ready to play, but he is getting up there. Maybe this is a Clyde Christensen situation where you kind of push him out. Ross, his cornerbacks haven't been healthy, but they don't make plays either. Like, it's hard because, he's had to deal with a lot of injuries at that position, whether it's been Jamel Dean or Carlton Davis or Zion or, whoever it is out there. Bryce Hall, he lost quickly. Like, whoever it is, he's dealt with a lot of injuries there. So it's hard to but then you look at the lack of, plays, and then you look at Jason is it because these guys aren't playmakers? You look at Zion, he had like 14 interceptions in college. He was never really known for his hands, but at least, you got to make some plays. So who does that fall on? I think there will be some new defensive coaches. I think edge rusher should definitely be upgraded. George Edwards hasn't done much with that room. But we'll see what happens down the pipeline. I think we're a little bit away from that. Although if guys are starting to form their staffs, I think, that's something that we could figure out fairly soon if someone wanted someone from the staff that Bowles has. So Kieran says, glad for Spytek to help build a great team here and has been a GM in waiting in my eyes for a while. Hope he does well with Brady in Las Vegas. I think that's the biggest sentiment. People are sad to see him go, but he's deserved it, and you're excited to see them. Lawrence Lowe asks, does this give us another pick in the draft? It does not. It has to be a coaching minority. That's the only way you get them. They have to be with the franchise for at least 2 years. That's why the Bucs did not get one for Dave Canales last year. Before I read those, I'm going to go into one of my ad reads. I want to thank one of our sponsors here, the exclusive ticketing partner of Pirate Parlay Podcast, Fango Tickets. Fango Tickets is your number one source for live events in Tampa Bay. Tired of getting blitzed by big ticketing companies? Turn to Fango for your exclusively locally owned and operated Tampa Bay ticketing partner that offers fans like you full transparency. They prioritize fair pricing and no hidden fees so that Tampa fans can enjoy events without unexpected costs. Visit fangotickets.com for unbeatable prices, personalized seat selection, and local partnerships that will take your game day to the next level. Check out Fango Tickets, guys. They're locally owned and operated right out there in St. Pete, and they got some awesome deals where you can package games with bars and reservations at bars and parking, and soon enough, hopefully hotels, so you can plan your whole trip in one go, whether you're coming to St. Pete, have people coming into St. Pete, to Tampa Bay, whether you're going to see a Rays game, if you're out in Orlando or whatever, you want to spend the night, don't want to drive home, whatever, check it out. They've got lots of stuff going on. Super excited to be partnered with them. I asked earlier, who is Mike Greenberg? Andre says cap space genius. Need I say more? But I did tell you who Spytek was, and again, sucks to lose him, but definitely excited for him. Buccaneer Bryce says, I love the idea of getting Byron Murphy at cornerback, Mike Green, Pierce, Mikael Williams in the first round, Trey Amos, Xavier Watts, Kevin Winston Jr. in the second round, Ted Johnson, Jalen Knoll in the third. We're going to get into draft stuff, guys. We're going to get into a ton of draft stuff. I'm not there yet. I have been doing mocks. I have been doing research, watching some tape, looking at some clips and stuff like that. But I'm not at draft time yet. We'll get there. And when we get there, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to bring in Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus, one of the best draft guys. We're bringing Justin Mello, who talks to all the prospects, see what he's hearing about some of the guys. We'll bring in Dane Brugler again, as we did last year, once the beast comes out, and have him break down and give us his thoughts. So much more. Draft time is a blast here. And we'll also do some cool free agency stuff too, where we talk about some guys. But that's coming down the pipeline, all right? Hold your horses with me, Buccaneer Bryce. We're going to do some live mocks on here too. It's going to be a lot of fun. Bucs fan says, replace Dean. I mean, he's okay, but the one thing you can count on is get injured when you need him again. You talked about that. It's unfortunate. But he is one of the best tacklers on the team. He's one of the best run defenders on the team. When he's asked to play press man in coverage, which, in this zone coverage, he's not often. He's one of the best zone man coverage corners in the league. I mean, yeah, sure, he got beat on that Terry McLaurin touch ball against the Commanders, but like that coverage was perfect. So it's you really can't get too mad at him. But again, $15.3 million that you're paying this guy in cash that can't stay healthy. You can get 8.4 against the cap. Do you do it? Are you looking at cornerback more in the first round now, or it's because you need to replace the starter? Do you go out and see what the price tag is on a Travarius Ward, maybe? So we'll get into free agency. We'll get into draft stuff, but I can't wait. But I mean, those are all things, and I'll have an article coming out. What should the Bucs do with Dean? And I'll have that coming out here soon, because it's the question: what should do? The heck of a person, great to be around. Hasn't been able to stay healthy. Hasn't been able to catch passes, and that's the truth of it. But one of the best cornerbacks in the league when asked to do the things that he does do well, which is tackle, play, run support, press man coverage, and he's fast. They're like those. And it's a shame that Bose doesn't use him in a way that properly highlights his skill set sometimes. But it is what it is. Bucs fan says Jason has to be aggressive and get us some ballers. I think he will. We need some killers, some real angry juice on the defense. They need to get some guys who can get some sacks. Is what they need to do. Plain and simple. Get some guys who can sack. Get some guys who can hit coming across the middle legally. And get some guys who can drop and cover in space. In this system, in this scheme, Bulls ain't going to change it up much. Your middle linebackers, your inside linebackers, off-ball linebackers, whatever the heck you want to call them these days, they're asked to cover a large part of that grass. And you got to have guys who can move. That's the one thing that you could say that, I guess, when you compare and contrast KJ Britt and Devin White often was not in the correct spot, but he had the speed to make up for it. And that was, that would drive you nuts because he just freelance, but then he'd make a play. Towards the end of his career, he couldn't even tackle anymore. He was tackling his own teammates. But the thing with KJ Britt is KJ Britt to me feels like a football player in like his 30s, late 30s, right? He knows what to do, but his body can't get there. He's just not athletic enough. He brings everything you want: intangibles, leadership, knows the defense in and out, knows the offense, what they're going to do in and out. It's just he's limited athletically. And you feel bad, like could you get a little, could help him out a little bit more? Because I think KJ Britt would be a really good linebacker. He just doesn't have the athleticism to run sideline to sideline and cover tight ends and wide receivers and backs that are coming, into his area and keep up with him consistently, and just the situation of it. But I lost where I was going on that tangent. But yeah, that's the situation. They need guys that can cover. Right. Real angry juice. That's where it was. They need guys who can cover. Jeremy says, yo, JC, great day in Tampa Bay. It is. It's a victory Wednesday. We're here. Again, Saul, an A or an L? I don't know. I can't see. Sal or Saul 319 says, cut down on the interceptions and fumbles. I'll do you one more. And the penalties. Those three things really plagued this Bucs team terribly. I mean, Baker had, I think, 16 fumbles, only lost 3 of them on the season, including the playoffs. But he had like 16 interceptions as well, or 15 interceptions as well. Like, you got to cut down on the turnovers. Got to cut down on the fumbles. Got to cut down on the Baker sacks. We all know what that is. They know what that is. He knows what that is. Got to cut down on the Baker sacks. And you got to cut down on the penalties. Illegal formation, offsides, false start. false start was a killer. Sometimes the refs will call you on a BS hold, and we all know, we've all seen it. Sometimes they won't call a hold at all. We all know it. We all seen it. Eli Manning in the 2007 Super Bowl won't call a hold, but we all know it. We all see it. But false start is, the Bucs had a lot of false starts this year. I got to go back and look how many false starts, but it was way too many. And the funny thing is, they played really well on the road, and they had less penalties on the road. It was at home where they had most of the penalties, where your offense is supposed to be, your crowd is supposed to be quiet while the offense works, right? Isn't that how it goes? Shh, offense at work. Baker's out here quieting down people, like, shut up, I'm trying to win this game. So that needs to change. All that needs to come down, and I think it will. As far as Baker's concerned, I think it will. There's always going to be risks with him because he thrives and loves to play in chaos where he's moving around. He's also a shorter quarterback, so can't see sometimes over the big lineman. And maybe the ball goes a little bit to the left, or a little bit right, because it's where he thought he was seeing. Or maybe it gets batted and tipped in the air. Those things happen too. And you got to live and die with them, because that's who Baker is. But he does need to be a little bit smarter. There was one interception. I forget to who it was. It could have been the Panthers in that first game, where he just threw a right to the guy. Like, there's like, try to kind of be like, well, the guy, like, I don't even know what you saw there on that play, man. So those things definitely got to get cleaned up, the turnovers and all that stuff. But yeah, Bucs fan says cut down the offensive turnovers, but also we got to get more defensive turnovers. It's got to get better. That's got to get better. That's priority one. Part of me wonders if Jordan Whitehead will be back. Is starting safety going to be a need? He is due $4.5 million this year. None of it's guaranteed. I wrote about this when he was signed. They could cut him at any point and not owe him a dollar. Plus, he had season-ending surgery. I think it was something to do with his vertebrae, according to reports. Like, he's not coming back. He wasn't coming back this year, no matter what. But what does that look like for next year? And is it worth the $4.5 million? What you got on the field, what you might be able to spend that $4.5 million in? Or if you could upgrade your secondary, I know my guy listed some safeties in here. Can you grab a safety in the draft to start, right? Can you in the second round, the third round, maybe you feel you can get this guy to start? There's some good players in there who I think will be around the second and third that could maybe be guys that jump in and start right away, like the dude in who's the dude in New York and I think Green Bay. They both got safeties that were really good, really good second round safeties that played very well for them. Some rookie mistakes, but played well for them. And I think, can you grab a guy in the second or early third round to be that guy and save $4.5 million? Or do you want to move Dean in that $8.5 million, and now you use that 8.5 and that 4.5 towards another cornerback or starting safety? Starting the safety free agent class looks like crap. So does a running back, but is that what you want? There's Justin Simmons and stuff like that. That's not terrible, but as far as like, wow. But that's kind of like, what do you want to do? What are you looking for? So it's it'll be interesting to see the way that they build this team this season. I am interested in seeing what Light does, knowing that they have the second youngest roster in the league. You can afford to bring in some veteran guys now. I think he'll be losing some veteran guys. No one like super, super impressive or important, but you'll be losing some guys for sure. So when you look at the Bucs free agents as a whole, they are going to be guys who are up are Chris Godwin, Levante David, Anthony Nelson, Greg Gaines, Bredesen, Joe Tryon-Shrenka, Royce Newman, Chase Edmonds, Tavier Thomas, Kyle Trask, Willem Golston, Stuart Opeta, Sterling Shepard, Justin School, Shaq Barrett, Troy Hill, Robert Hainsey, Bryce Hall, Mike Edwards, Ryan Neal, Eric Banks, KJ Britt, JJ Russell, who's an exclusive rights free agent, so he's back no matter what. Same thing with Kayvon Merriweather and CJ Brewer. All they have to do is just say that they want them back, and they're back. Cody Thompson and Daniel Griziak. Griziak's already been signed to a futures contract with the team. So I mean, those are your free agents for this season. Chris Godwin, Levante David, if he comes back, must haves. I feel like Anthony Nelson, Greg Gaines, Ben Bredesen would love to have those guys back. Total those guys made last year 6, 11, 20, 31, $40 million last year, give or take, for those 5 guys. So, I mean, Godwin's 20, but I mean, you'll mess with Godwin's $20 million per year. He's not going to cost $20 million if you re-sign him. So, I mean, you'll get that for much less, especially if you sign him before his dead cap hit. So, although that's not a huge thing that they worry about. Other than that, Javier Thomas, I could see him come back. He was good on special teams, can play a little corner, can play a little safety, was great in the locker room. Justin School, another guy I think they could bring back as well. Robert Hainsey, if he doesn't find a starting opportunity, I think he will, though. At least a chance to compete, whether that's with the Raiders or maybe the Bears or something like that. I think Hainsey's put enough film out there that he can, especially coming in and playing that game this season on short notice. I think he'll be fine. The other ones, again, I'm not sure. I know they like KJ Britt, but I just think that, they probably both need to move on. He's not going to get a starting opportunity. So if you can find somewhere where he can at least compete for one, maybe that's what you look at it. And, maybe it's, there was a lot of issues with, people going down and people getting injured. He was injured for a while too. And, maybe you can your agent can spin it that way as, hey, we didn't, the responsibilities that I had weren't the responsibilities I should have had. And yada, yada. I don't know. Sterling Shepard would be interesting. I think Will Golston probably calls it a career. Really only played 18% of the snaps this year. Really didn't do much. I could see him transitioning into maybe an assistant coach, but maybe just take a couple years off. He coaches his son's football league, West Chase Colts. So maybe that's something that he does. And then not Troy Hill, Bryce Hall, coming off season in surgery. What are they? He only cost 1.1 million last year. You could get him cheap. Same thing with Mike Edwards if you really wanted to. So, the Bucs really don't have a lot of free agents. They certainly don't look like they're in line for any compensatory picks unless Godwin goes somewhere. Maybe again Anthony Nelson or Greg Gaines get Bredesen. One of those 3 guys get poached. You never know. Edge rushers. He's only 26. He does a lot of good stuff in coverage. JTS. He could fetch something that could get you a 6th or 5th round pick on a decent sized contract, somewhere around like $7-8 million a year. But I expect the Bucs to be aggressive, so anything they do is going to cancel that out. So don't expect a compensatory pick next season. Before we get out of here, I do want to give another shout out to one of our other sponsors here, Mosley Heating and Air. When Florida heat hits hard, trust Mosley Heating and Air to keep you cool and comfortable. Need a repair, new system, or maintenance plan, they've got you covered. Their family-owned business has 25 years of experience and knows what it keeps to keep your home HVAC system running smoothly. Need a repair, new system, or maintenance plan, they've got you covered. Call Mosley Heating and Air today at 813-230-3742 or visit mosleyheatingandair.com. Mosley Heating and Air, where comfort meets reliability. You don't need it now. You got to make sure your heater's working today. It's like 43 degrees out right now. It's a cold, wet 43. So, I know people are watching this from around. We have 43. It's like 6 degrees here. Trust me, it's a different 6. I'm from the north, but this is crazy. Like 43 feels like 17 degrees. It's a cold, weird, wet, damp, cold. It just goes right through your body. So you need to check with Mosley Heating and Air if you're having any heating issues. Is the moral of the story there, because they will get right out to you and they'll repair your system for you. Other than that, couple housekeeping news, nothing crazy, but the Bucs did sign a couple of other players to future contracts. One would be defensive tackle Adam Gotsis, who they signed right before the end of the season. Didn't play or anything like that, but they did have signed on January 8th to the practice squad. Played in Denver for a couple of years, came in as a 3rd-round pick in 2016. Also played with the Jaguars, the Colts. He's had 54 starts. So, I mean, you look at what he's been able to do: 223 tackles, 25 for a loss, 42 quarterback hits, 22 pass defense, 10.5 sacks, 4 fumble recoveries, and 3 forced fumbles. He's from Australia, mate. Originally played his college at Georgia Tech. And he was a beast over there as well. Appeared in 48 career games. So it's a good signing for the future. The guy has some experience. He's got some pedigree as a second-round pick. He's been in the league quite a while, so maybe he factors in if they lose someone on the defensive line, like maybe Will Golston. Maybe he's just more of a guy for camp and to maybe stash in the practice squad as a veteran there. But we'll see how that plays out. Another guy who's got an opportunity to make this team is going to be Jake Julian. He's a punter that actually he's an all-star punter, I should say, this past season for the Canadian Football League Edmonton Elks. He's got 36 games of experience, 228 times he's punted for 49.4 gross average. He did a lot of stuff. CFL All-Star after he led the league in gross punting average, 54, established a new CFL record for the highest such average in a single season. Played at Eastern Michigan University, so with Jose Ramirez there. Didn't play with him, but played at the same school. And he was good. 44 gross average there too, 49.4 gross average, 54 gross average. So, I mean, he's booming these kicks. So it's another guy. I also know a guy. I'm going to tell you one guy right now. I know I said I wouldn't talk draft. Brian Buschini. He's a punter from Nebraska. Guy averaged, I think, 47 yards per punt net last year for Nebraska. So Nebraska, keyword there. Jason Light, Cornhuskers. Nebraska punter in the 5th round. Watch, it's gonna happen. Other than that, it was a slow day for the Buccaneers. Not much happening. You lose your assistant GM, you keep your OC. One thing's got to give. Buccaneers out. Also, I will say too, Dad Lewis has been a guy who has been interviewed the last 2 years. Didn't get anything this year as OC, but as we'll see, his head coaching spots are still available. Larry Foote, I guess right now he's the defensive coordinator because what's his name is no longer, Casey Rogers is no longer under contract. So Larry Foote is your defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, off-ball linebackers coach. Dad Lewis coaches the quarterbacks. They're both going to be coaches in the Pro Bowl games. Picked the Eli Manning staff over there on the NFC side. So some Bucs getting some coaching work done, some networking work done here at the NFC Pro Bowl games, maybe some schmoozing with some players on both the offensive side and defensive side of the ball. I will note that they're the only teammates, I should say, that were chosen. Everyone else was chosen from separate squads, but both of those guys were chosen from the Bucs. And good opportunity for them. They continue to impress. We really don't know what Foote can do as a defensive coordinator, as he's the passing game coordinator as well. He hasn't been able to really call plays other than the preseason when there's whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But other than that, not much happening in the world of the Buccaneers, except Liam Coen's coming back, and they're going to be, I think, really aggressive this offseason. We'll go into some of their candidates. I think the next show before we jump into really free agency and the draft, we'll really focus on free agency first because that's the first thing coming up. But also as a Senior Bowl is coming around and everything like that, certainly be talking about draft and draft prospects pretty much hand in hand. Where we'll go over some postseason awards. We'll get that going. Who won what? As far as most valuable player, who was the 3 up and 3 down, who are the 3 biggest players who improved, who kind of regressed. We'll get into all that stuff, grading the units, just a season recap of the Buccaneers, awards, who improved, who regressed in this past season, and and grade each position. Quarterbacks, what did they get as a grade? Obviously, you're grading just pretty much Baker Mayfield, but running backs, what did they grade out as? Safety room, cornerback room. We'll kind of go through and run through grades, and I'll have you guys, give me your grades and maybe form a consensus on what we all feel like. But yeah, that should be fun next week on Wednesday, and then it's full gear into the offseason. We should have. Hopefully we'll have a better idea who's staying, who's going on this staff, as far as the defensive side, and maybe we'll even hear from Coen, Light, or Todd Bowles and kind of get the sense of what's going on at $1. That's going to do it for me here on the Pirate Parlay podcast. I appreciate all of you guys. Like, subscribe, turn notifications. Everyone listening to podcast format, appreciate you. The Sick Podcast Network, I appreciate you guys for putting us on here. As always, I'm your host, JC Allen. Find me on X. Find me on Bucs Game Day powered by Sports Illustrated. Find me everywhere. DMs are always open. Hit me up if you guys want to chat. Other than that, we're out of here. Peace out. Later.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.